this is your instructor Megan. In this video I want to talk about the Transmedia Narrative Project that you are now starting on. The Transmedia Project, I'm not going to go over every little aspect of it, although I am going to go over the beginning of the Transmedia Project because that's what you're going to be doing this week. If you want to read about every little facet of the Transmedia Project, there is a very detailed project explainer in the syllabus and instructions tab on Blackboard, so I do expect you to open that this week and read every word of it. But I do want to talk about the project and give you some context for that document. So the Transmedia Project is really an exercise in applying that information interaction design that you've been learning about to a transmedia storytelling experience using the iterative HCI design process. So you might think about this project not just as doing all those things. I mean, in the group meetings, you've learned about information interaction, you've learned about organizing and presenting data, you've learned about how storytelling helps people gain knowledge, how social interaction helps people gain knowledge, you've learned about the iterative design process. I think you guys see how it all fits together in the service of helping you design some digital product, which in this case is a transmedia narrative. But I want you to maybe think about this project as the chance to solve a problem of some kind. I think this is a little confusing to think like, well, isn't transmedia storytelling just telling a fun story? What does a problem have to do with it? But I think some of the best transmedia narratives are transmedia narratives where the creators had something they really wanted people to do, something they wanted people to learn or to experience that solved some kind of problem in the world. So you end up with transmedia narratives like A World Without Oil, where the creators were sort of looking around and saying, one of the problems going on in the United States right now is people don't really seem to have a sense of urgency about the fact that we eventually will run out of certain natural resources, including oil, unless we do something about it. And so these creators said, that's a problem. People don't really seem to get it. They don't seem to really take it seriously. So let's help people take it seriously and explain to them why it's so important in a fun way. So you might think about solving some kind of problem or investigating some kind of issue. Maybe it's a problem where there's it's probably going to be a problem when there's no clear solution. A problem like, how do we get people online to have more empathy when they communicate with each other? That's not a problem for which we have an easy solution, but it's a problem you could create a transmedia narrative of that would kind of bring that problem to light. I think you guys explored this in some of your brainstorming pieces, a problem. People don't have awareness of something, or they don't understand how to do something, or they need to be taught how to do something, or they've never thought about something and they should. Or there's all these different ways of thinking about something and no one has ever decided, many people haven't decided which way they agree with. Think about your transmedia narrative that way. If you just think about like, oh, I can tell any story I want, I think the choice there is a little overwhelming. So maybe try and narrow it down. Think about an issue you care about. Maybe it's food insecurity, maybe it's organic farming, maybe it's bullying, maybe it's social justice, and think about how you might use a transmedia story to do something in that space. So let's talk about how you're going to do this project. You're going to walk through the HCI iterative design process. So you're going to start with requirements, move to alternatives, prototype, and then perform evaluation. So you're going to research users to find features, to find the data that you need and the constraints that you're under. For this class, for researching users, you're really not going to do your own user research. We just don't have time in this class to really get into user research. We could have a whole other class on it, and I actually think we should. There's a lot there. What you're going to do is, for your research, you're going to look at other websites and other experiences, and you're going to sort of see what they're doing and make some assumptions about users based on those. Then you're going to create alternatives, so different ways of telling the story, different ways of achieving your goals. If you want people to go through an experience where they're really emotionally drained by the end, you're going to think of different ways of doing that. At that point, you're also going to sort of create asset lists. You're going to prototype, so you're going to make those ideas real somehow, and then you're going to evaluate or test the idea. So these are the steps of the HCI iterative design process. And of course this repeats, right? When you get to evaluation, you go to requirements. So you might almost think of this process as sort of, you go around the circle once in a really broad sense. So here you go about it just thinking about what am I going to do, and then you get more narrow and you go around the circle again with more specifics, and then you go around again, you get even more narrow. You think about it with even more specifics. So in the beginning, this week, you're just going to be talking about concepts, really. You haven't made anything, you haven't looked at users, you haven't looked at competitors. You're just thinking about this in a really conceptual level, and this is going to feel really messy. And so I depicted this kind of trip around the iterative process as really big because it's going to feel like overly large and like you haven't really gotten anything specific out of it yet. So this week you're going to create some brainstorming. That's going to be your alternatives. You're going to sort of talk about them, and then in the future you're going to move on. So in week 8 you're going to get more specific. Now after this week you will have had some pre-planning, so in week 8, you're going to go look for solid requirements. What do users need? What kind of data do you need? What kind of assets do you need? And then you're going to design alternatives in week 9. In week 9, you're going to prototype those alternatives by drawing them out on paper, and then you're going to evaluate them with a heuristic evaluation. And then you're going to get more specific. In weeks, that should say 10 and 11, and then 12 through 14, you're going to do a digital design. So you're going to take everything you learned from the paper drawings and you're going to get even more specific. You're going to throw out anything that's not working. You're going to get more specific and more narrowed and have an even better idea of exactly what it is you're doing. So another way to depict this is to kind of say that we're in this phase right here. We're in the concept phase. So we're going around the circle and then we still kind of feel like we're in space. We do some drawings, we go around the circle again, we do a digital design, we go around the circle again, and we're going to sort of narrow. So this week it is going to feel messy. You are going to sort of feel like you don't really know if you're doing it right, you don't really know if you're hitting on the right idea. You're going to have a lot of ideas, you're going to have to throw some out, you're going to be unsure about some. That's just how the design process works. This is not my invention, by the way, this squiggly line. It's based off of a poster that was created by a designer in which he presents his own design process, and I thought it was really great. And I thought it perfectly described how you might feel about this class, where we're really conceptual this week and you're going to feel a little bit like you're in space. But then next week or 2 weeks from now, you're going to start drawing. And you're going to feel like you have a little bit better handle on it. And then by the time you actually get to make the digital assets, your websites, your YouTube videos, you're going to feel like you have an even better handle on it. So that's what we're going to be on this sort of roller coaster in the class. And the final output of your transmedia narrative is actually going to be a high fidelity prototype. So you're not going to create a 100% complete narrative that people are actually going to play from start to finish. It's going to be a transmedia narrative that's ready to be put into play. And I think the best way to think about this is to kind of think about the project like it's the board game Mousetrap. So you get Mousetrap and it's in the box and it's all pieces and then instructions. And you have to set the pieces up according to the instructions in order to play it. So what you guys are doing in this class is you're sort of creating the pieces and you're creating the instructions. So you're going to make those pieces, you're going to set them up on the board, you're going to build instructions for how to play it, but you're not ever really going to, tick the first marble down the mousetrap. You're going to just set the whole thing up. So you're not going to put it into play and push that marble over the edge at the beginning of the mousetrap shoots and everything. You're just going to make all the pieces, make the board, make the rules, get it together, and you're going to test each other's. So instead of actually playing the game, you're going to play it like a beta tester. So you're going to play other people's in this class. You're going to get your friends to beta test it for you. But you're not actually going to fully play the game and implement the entire narrative. And unfortunately, it's just a time issue that we have with the 16-week semester. It just takes so long to get these things set up. If you've ever played Mousetrap, it takes so long to set Mousetrap up, you don't actually even want to play it by the time you set it up. We run into that issue here where it takes so long to set these things up. If you were to play it, you would have like a week for it to happen, and that's not enough time. These transmedia narratives, they take place over weeks, months, sometimes years. So you're going to be the mousetrap builder. You're going to build the pieces, you're going to get the board game out, you're going to set it all up, and then you're going to give it to your classmates and they're going to tinker around with it, but no one's actually going to hit the first marble off and play the game. Where things might get sticky with this is if your transmedia narrative requires a lot of audience interaction or participation, that could be a problem, right? If you have that Mousetrap board game and there's a piece where player has to like stop the game and then do something else, or if they were a part of the mousetrap game where the player got to build their own trap, that's difficult to test, right? Because you don't know what people are going to do until you give it to them to do. So if you have a section of your transmedia narrative that requires audience participation or interaction, like a forum or a vote that people take, or maybe a puzzle where they have to solve the puzzle, you're going to have to do a Wizard of Oz prototype, or as I always say, we're just going to have to Wizard of Oz it. And this comes exactly from what you think, the idea of Wizard of Oz. The guy standing behind the curtain, acting like he's the wizard and like he's got magical powers, but he really doesn't. It's the same idea. What you're going to do is you're going to fake it. So if you have forums, you're going to put some fake forum posts on there to kind of show what the forums would be and to get your classmates who are evaluating your project to understand what it is and see how they might participate. And the people who are evaluating, of course, they can fake it too. They can leave forum comments even though they're not really playing. So there might be some areas where you have to kind of Wizard of Oz it. If you have a vote as part of your story, you should just create maybe, if you have 4 choices, you can make only one winnable so that when someone tests your game, they can only pick that one and then they see what happens. So basically fake it in order to demonstrate how the thing works. So if there's a part of your narrative where you need audience interaction or participation, you're going to fake it. And that doesn't mean, throw some crap together. It just means if people have to jump from here to here through a puzzle, you're going to go ahead and make here and here and make the puzzle and just make it so that we can see what happens when they finish the puzzle, even though no one really did the puzzle. So if you're thinking back to I Love Bees where they made phone calls and people had to answer it, if you had that in your narrative, you could fake it. You could record a couple phone calls and your testers could listen to them, and then you could sort of be at the end of the phone call be like, hey, you passed this test, so go to this website, and kind of fake that interaction. If you're ever stuck on this, you're thinking like, how do I Wizard of Oz this? How do I fake it? I don't understand how to make this work. Please let me know, because I have a lot of experience with doing the Wizard of Oz in usability tests where you're trying to show what would happen without having to program all of it or without having to get the audience participation. So this is something I would be more than happy to help you with and suggest some solutions for you. This week, of course, we're not going to get nearly that far. We're just going to go around that HCI design process circle conceptually. So this week we're just kind of in the conceptual world. The goal of this week is for you to explore your options and narrow down to one idea and then describe that idea. So you're sort of building the roadmap a little bit this week. We're just going around that HCI process diagram when it was really big. We're just sort of in conceptual world. We're going to just be loose with the specifics throughout the week until we get to the end. We're going to make some decisions and then get more specific. So what you're going to do this week is requirements, alternatives, prototype, and evaluation. So at this point, you don't know what the requirements of your story are because you don't know what your story is. So the requirements this week are just what I give you. So I'll go over the requirements of the project. The alternatives are just your brainstorm ideas. This is going to be messy. I'll show you some examples. The prototype is just going to be a list of those brainstormed ideas. So it's just going to be sentences describing what the thing is. Evaluation, you and your teammate are just going to rank the ideas and then talk about them. You're not going to do any formal testing or anything. So again, a real conceptual jaunt around the diagram. So the requirements for the project is that you have to include both an online and physical presence. Do not, I'm going to put my video on, do not forget the physical presence. This is one of the biggest problems I see in this class is you get really into like making WordPress sites and making videos, and week 12 rolls around for testing and you realize you didn't build in any physical presence. So physical presence just means the real world is used in some way. People get phone calls. People have to go to a location. People have to do geocaching. People have to find something in a tree. People have to go to an event. People have to find a character at a park. People have to get something in the mail and fill it out. There's so many different things you could do here. But you have to have some kind of physical presence. It does have to be some kind of event-based thing. You're going to storyboard what that physical presence is and make sort of a video of what would happen. So I would suggest maybe having like a character in real life that people need to not hunt down, but find out where they are and go talk to them, kind of like a real life informant for your story, or an event where people who play the narrative or participate in the narrative can get together and trade clues. I mean, there's so many options here, but something has to take place in the real world. You have to include multiple forms of media, so do not just make a YouTube channel. Several websites, so you need to have at least 4 websites that require navigation, which means it can't just be one page, for this project. And these are going to be things like maybe your bad guy has a website, maybe your hero has a website, maybe your mentor has a website, maybe your call to action is its own website. So 4 websites, honestly, in the scope of a transmedia narrative is really not that many. That's only 2 for each of you to make. I suggest you have more than that, but at minimum, that's how many you need. And things like YouTube and Twitter, those don't count as your websites. Those are social media that already exist. When I say websites, I mean websites that you actually make. So some web property where you have posted media. I don't care if it's like an online diary you put on WordPress. I don't care if it's a little interactive you whip up in Flash and stick on a website. You just need to have designed that yourself. You need to have a story hub that is beyond those websites. So a 5th website that is your story hub. Again, the story hub is where people can go to catch up on the story and kind of see what they missed. CryptoZoo is a great, I'll put a little pop-up over this video if I can. If not, it'll be in the information. CryptoZoo is a great place to go to see what a story hub looks like. It has instructions, it has a list of how to participate, how to get started. So I'll show you that story hub to get you thinking about what your story hub might look like. You need to tell a story from beginning to end, so you can't just set the story up and sort of say, oh, anything could happen. Again, I need it to be like that mousetrap game. I need the pieces to be there, I need the instructions to be there. It's just not going to get all kicked off. I can't just have the first, you can't just have the first seesaw in mousetrap and then you say, oh, the rest would be magic. I need to know what's going to be there. You have to have some form of audience participation. That's pretty simple. I mean, you have 4 websites to put that on. You can do something outside of those websites. You must have at least 1 real-world event, so that's going to take care of your physical presence, although I suggest you also consider other ways of having physical presence, like maybe mailing people badges, whatever it is. You have to work within copyright laws. No stealing stuff in this class, okay? It's something, this is, unfortunately for you, this is a really big pet peeve of mine, because technically, when you are learning in a classroom, you are allowed to use copyrighted materials. It's a doctrine called fair use, and it says, oh, students can kind of use copyrighted things, but only in the classroom. The problem we have is we're extending outside the classroom. We're creating websites, we're creating assets that go on YouTube, we're creating multimedia that go on web hosting, we're creating things that are getting mailed to people. We are going outside the bounds of a classroom. So a big pet peeve of mine is when people say, oh, they're students, let them steal stuff. If you do that when you graduate, you will get fired. And I have had former students who plagiarized or broke copyright laws, even unknowingly, who were fired from their jobs for doing so. So I don't want to teach you bad habits and say, just go get whatever you want and throw it in your thing. You need to work within copyright laws. If you ever have questions about these, I will work with you. I will look at anything you're making and let you know my assessment of whether or not you're breaking copyright. The biggest thing here is just make your own stuff, make your own assets. If you need elements, like you need background pictures, or you need, I don't know, typeface or something, I suggest using Creative Commons and attributing those people. So I'm going to be a stickler on this. The last 2 requirements are just my suggestions for you. Try caring about this story. I don't want you to craft a story because you think I want to hear it or you think it's going to get you an A. That's going to be a boring story, I'm sure. You have to look at this story for the next 11, it's like 9, I think it's like 10 weeks with Thanksgiving in there. So don't pick a story you don't care about. Pick a story you actually care about. I want you to tell a story you're interested in. If you go for something really big, like if you're looking at how you could tell a story where the villain is really the hero, and by the end of the class you find out that you really can't do that, I'm okay with that. I would love to see you crash and burn flying for the sun as opposed to making something safe and nothing interesting comes out of it. So don't be afraid to crash and burn. And on that note, you can change your story at any time. So if something isn't working, change it. I don't care. If you get to week 15 and your user testing comes back saying that your whole thing doesn't work and you want to scrap everything that you have, I really don't care, as long as you put in the work to kind of go back and redo everything. If you get to week 15 and you find out it doesn't work and you say, well, can we start over but like only do half of it because we're out of time? No, you cannot. But if you're willing to go back and make changes, that's fine. If your idea isn't working, fix it. If your idea is working and at the last minute you come up with an even better idea and you want to throw that in there, go for it. It's not a class on whether or not you did exactly what you said you were going to do 10 weeks ago. It's a class in having a successful story and going through the design process successfully and then writing about what you learned. So change it if you don't like it. And you don't need to ask me if you can change it. I trust you. You know, do what you think is right. You look at the story every day. All right, alternatives. This week for your alternatives, basically you're just going to, based on those requirements I'm giving you, come up with as many ideas as you can and just type them out. This is going to be ugly. It's going to be messy. I don't care. It can be a combination. I mean, if you look at this brainstorming document that I've written up as an example, you'll see that it's just random. Some of them are goals, like get people to learn karate. Some of them are things that I think, you know, places that would be good for the physical location. So Fort Harrison in Indianapolis is really cool. That could be a cool place for a physical event to happen. Here's a crazy story I heard once that might be neat to model off of. I would love to do transmedia narrative that uses Snapchat. I really want to make free mittens and have Snapcat and have cats Snapchatting each other. I think that would be the most fun ever, so I put that on here. These are just ideas. I want to see at least 20 ideas. You could easily have 2 to 3 pages, single-spaced of ideas. The more the merrier. Quantity over quality. Just type them all out. Don't be embarrassed. Get it out there. If you want to have, you know, you have silly ideas, put them in here, get them out. I'm not grading you here on whether I like all of your ideas. That's not what this is about. To evaluate those brainstorming ideas, I suggest that each person on your team does the brainstorming separately, do it separately, and then copy and paste your pieces together in one document so that you can see each other's, and then go through and highlight the ones that you really think are going to work. So highlight the brainstorming pieces that you really like, whether it's problems you want to solve or characters you're interested in making or technology you're interested in using. It doesn't matter. Go through and highlight. And you can see in this example, if this were me and another person, I would highlight using darker colors to show more agreement. So in this case, if this were highlighting done by 2 people, the light yellow would mean that one person liked it. The dark yellow would mean that both of us highlighted it. Do you see? So it's like you're adding the 2 highlights together to make it darker. That's going to help you rank the ideas to see which ones one person likes and which ones you both agree on. Do this and then get together and decide what you're going to do. So I would suggest maybe having all of the brainstorming done by Monday. Maybe, you know, shoot your teammate an email and let them know where the brainstorming should go and when you want it due on Monday, whether you want it at 5 or midnight or whatever, and then set up a time, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, to sit and talk it out. And then at that meeting, sit and talk it out and do your pre-planning document. That's what I suggest. So the pre-planning document, you're going to write about treatment, characters, and ancillary stories. I'm not going to go over these in super great detail because I've already talked for 20 minutes for somehow, and you can read this. So you're going to just tell me what's the theme of the story. So what are you trying to convey with this story? Tell me a little bit about your story world. Tell me a synopsis of the plot. Tell me about the characters. Who are your character archetypes? You know, give me a little bit about each one. For each one, tell me why they are the way they are, how they treat other people. Give me a little bit of background and what kind of traits do they have. Keep in mind that for your story, you and your friends are likely going to play these characters. So if you need videos, keep in mind that you have to get a video of someone. So you're going to have to find a friend, or maybe it's one of you who becomes one of those characters. So just keep that in mind. You know, if you want to have characters, if you have a character with like an alien, think about whether you can reasonably design up an alien to be that character. Maybe you don't make them a video, since you can't get a video of an alien without having like a really fancy costume, which maybe you could do. So just think about that as you're working on these. Ancillary stories, we talked about this in your group meetings. Any spin-offs, so if you want your villain to have their own fan club, you know, you want them to have their own sort of rich life, you can have a spin-off for your villain. Here, think Friends, right? Like Joey got his own little spin-off about how he does dumb stuff because people apparently think that's funny. So ancillary stories, think about the characters people are going to connect to. You can give them their own little spin-offs. Scripts, okay, you read about this in your Making Transmedia piece. We're going to sort of explode that piece. This week you're going to do brainstorming. The problem with that piece is it doesn't really mesh all these needs with the HCI process. So you have scripts, you have mapping. It doesn't really say where that fits in the HCI process. So I'm going to tell you now, and I'm just going to tell you when to do it. So we're not going to do scripts this week because we're not ready for it. You're going to write them in the prototyping weeks 10 and 11, as you put your digital prototype together. There's no point in us doing them now, because if you write scripts this week, you might do research next week and find out you are totally off base and your scripts aren't going to work for what you did. You haven't even decided what media you have yet, so why are we writing scripts? We're not going to. We're going to do that in weeks 10 and 11. Again, mapping the story, you're not going to map the story this week. You're going to map it in week 9 when you create alternatives. You haven't done research, you don't know what media assets you need, how can we map it out? We're going to wait until we're ready. You're going to draw a storyboard in week 9. And then the media assets list, you're not going to create that this week, you're going to do that in week 8. So just to review this week, you are going to brainstorm. So you're going to go around this process. You're going to take the requirements I give you. You're going to brainstorm alternatives. You're going to list those alternatives out in a written format, which is like your prototype. You're going to evaluate them, and then you're going to come together as teammates, figure out what you actually want to do, and write the pre-planning document. If you have any questions, feel free to send them my way. If you just are looking for feedback on ideas or anything like that, I'd be glad to give you some. That's it. I will let you go. I've talked way too much. Have a good week.